Hello, Hot Mess historians. It's Janet. We're going to be talking about Anne of Cleves, Henry VIII's fourth wife. So Henry's third wife is dead. For whatever reason, he feels the desire to marry yet a fourth time. Now, following Jane Seymour's death, he does go into mourning for 3 months, which is much longer than he was in mourning for any of his previous wives. Unlike his previous wives, Henry is going to find some difficulty in locating and convincing someone to marry him again. He's developed a bit of a reputation for the way that he's treated his wives, and honestly, nobody wants to take the chance. His previous marriages you could consider love matches, however unconventional. They fell in love and they got married. His ambassadors are encouraging him to make more of a political marriage this go around. Henry sends his ambassadors out across Europe in search of a wife. However, Henry decides that he's going to be super shallow and declares that any of the women that these ambassadors are considering for marriage to him have to be beautiful, and he wants to be reported back about their appearance, not their political standing or what they could bring for an alliance. He's all about the looks. Even though he is aging considerably, has gained lots of weight, and is extremely temperamental. What right does he have to be judgmental? Oh, right. He's the king. My bad. As his ambassadors are going out across Europe, they are approaching these different women, kind of getting feelers out with, whether they would be willing to consider marrying Henry. They approached Christina of Milan with the intention of extending a marriage proposal, and she famously replied, "If I had but 2 heads, I would risk it, but I only have one." Mary de Guise, who would later become Mary Queen of Scots, responded in much the same way. No one wanted to risk their life by being his wife. Hans Holbein was one of the most famous painters of that particular era, and he was commissioned by Henry to go out and paint portraits of these potential brides. And Holbein visits Cleves and paints a portrait of the Duke of Cleves' sisters, Amelia and Anne. The reason that Henry's ambassadors were pushing for a political marriage rather than a love match is because there was a serious threat from the powerful Catholic countries like Rome and France. There was the risk of them forming an alliance and moving militarily against England, who, again, broke from the Catholic Church to marry Anne Boleyn. This threat of these powerful countries uniting against England was very scary because England had no allies at the time. Now, Cleves was an area of political and religious advantage to England. In that worst case scenario that Rome and France, Spain, unite and move against England. Now, Holbein was, like I said, one of the best and most famous painters of the era. And when he returned to Henry with his portrait of Anne of Cleves, Henry said, Anne arrived in England on January 1st of 1540, and they were married just 6 days later. And Henry's already looking for a way out of this marriage. Anne's early education focused primarily on domestic skills and not the frivolity of music and literature that dominated the English court. Most importantly, Henry's major sticking point in seeking a way out of this marriage is because he's very shallow and has to have the most beautiful bride. Holbein did his job too well. He portrayed Anne more attractive in the portrait than Henry perceived her in reality. Henry famously referred to Anne as his Flanders mare. Basically, he was saying she had the face of a horse. He's clearly never looked in a frickin' mirror. All of that superficial bullcrap aside, the aggressions that were anticipated from France and Spain dissipated. They just vanished. There's no threat anymore. And Cleves was not needed as an ally to England to help them protect their shores. On the other hand, it was looking more and more like Cleves was going to be going to war with France and Spain. And Henry, being the mercurial person that he is, decides, I wanted them as my ally when I needed help, but I don't want to go to war. If Cleves goes to war, then I'm going to be required to step in as an ally, and I've changed my mind. I don't need it. Let's just break our ties. Now, Anne's not an idiot. She didn't fit well in the English court in general, and certainly not in a position as queen. And based on Henry's reputation, she knew better than to fight and argue and try to find a way to stay in her position. She remembers what happened to Anne Boleyn. She's not fighting it. Anne amicably testified before the Anglican court that their marriage had not been consummated, and that she in fact had been betrothed in her early age to the son of the Duke of Lorraine. Now, this earlier betrothal is considered a contract and therefore made Anne ineligible for marriage. And so she decided, I'm going to take the easy way out. She testified all of these things, and their marriage was annulled in July of 1540. So they were only married for about 7 months. Anne didn't just say, I'll say whatever you want me to say, I'm going to move on. She actually was rewarded for so peaceably ending the marriage by receiving a very large income for the rest of her life, under the stipulation that she remain in England, that she not return to Cleves. And Anne was like, yeah, that's fine. I have way more freedom here than I would if I went back home, because if I go back home, I'm not going to have this large income that you're giving me, and my brother is going to just become a tyrant, keep me under lock and key, or try to marry me off to somebody worse. Like, she truly had a huge amount of freedom that she would not have retained if she had returned back to Cleves. In addition to the large income and retaining freedom to do what she wants by remaining in England, she was also awarded properties, including Hever Castle, which previously belonged to the family of the deceased Queen Anne Boleyn. Her position in the English court was second only to her stepdaughters, the Princesses Mary and Elizabeth, Henry's own daughters. Following the annulment, and once she's got her household set up at Hever Castle and wherever she's living, she does come back to court occasionally to visit with Henry, and it's said that she and Henry kept up a very friendly relationship throughout the remainder of their lives. She was actually given an honorary title of the King's Sister. So while they weren't in love and they didn't have this passionate affair or passionate marriage, they had a familial love for one another. She would continue to carry that title with her and live a simple life until her death in 1557.